Hi strangers, I wanted to make a special video for public use because normally I'm just posting videos on Patreon, but this one seemed like a big deal and like something that I really wanted to share with everybody. And it is about seasonal affective disorder because it is January. It's hit me pretty hard, and I recently posted about it on Instagram and it seemed to resonate with a lot of people. I got a lot of messages about it. I've been dealing with anxiety and depression in some form since I was 7 years old when I was first put in the Worried Kids Club group, which was just like a group therapy session. I've been medicated for anxiety and depression several times in my life, starting at ages like 17, whenever they first thought it might be safe for me to do. But I don't take any medicine for it now, and I sort of wanted to share some of the coping techniques that I've came across over the past like 33 years of my life. I felt like this topic especially is something that I wanted to talk about because when it came to being diagnosed with major depressive disorder, I felt like there had to be a better way to deal with things than medication. Like for me, I just felt like I was always right on the tipping point of going crazy, and then I was constantly having to do something to sort of like keep me from going over the edge. I don't want to sound like I'm crazy, but it felt like I needed to constantly be vigilant and stay on top of doing preemptive exercises, and it seemed like there had to be a better way. And I have just learned that my mental health is something that I have to work harder on than maybe other people. Everybody has their problems. That's mine. So in the past few years, I've done classes that have sort of gotten me out of the house, or I've traveled during the winter. So seasonal affective disorder hasn't been something that I've been actively dealing with. But this year, it's hit me a little hard. So I think it should be said that I am not a healthcare professional in any way. This isn't like medical advice. I just want to share things that worked for me that might work for you, because my gut instinct when something is wrong is not immediately to go to the doctor. And maybe it should be. Maybe I should be like, go to the doctor. I feel like there's so much prevention that we can do with anxiety and depression that doctors kind of never really helped me with. Their jobs are sort of to get you back to where you need to be. So they like to treat the symptoms. And sometimes you have to address the underlying issue, especially when it comes to things like anxiety and depression. So I'm going to talk more about that. I won't delve too much into my own history. It gets depressing. Seasonal affective disorder is like a subset of depression. It's like short-term major depression. It only really affects you in winter months, especially in January and February, and it's more likely to happen if you're a woman and between the ages of 20 and 30, and if you live further away from the equator. Like major depression, it can be treated with therapy, antidepressants, exercise, but in many people, it can also be treated with light therapy and vitamin D. Before making this video, I tried to read some science articles to sort of understand how it's different and what it is exactly. And there's actually a bunch of factors that sort of come together that create this big pile of sadness, and most of them happen because it's just dark for too long during the day. Things like an overproduction of melatonin, which causes you to sleep more, throws off your circadian rhythm, a lack of the ability to produce vitamin D because of lack of sun exposure. They just know there's a bunch of factors that exist in people that have seasonal affective disorder, and yeah, that's where we're at. So I want to talk a little bit about how anxiety and depression affect me. If you have seasonal affective disorder, at this point, you just want to treat it like regular depression until you get out of it, and hopefully it'll just go away in the next 2 months. But if you have an anxiety and depression, this might also just be a helpful video for you to see. So anxiety, the way that it affects me, I have really bad irrational thinking. I literally get sick. I end up taking more trips to the doctor because in me, it manifests itself into paranoia about relationships and also hypochondria, which is really fun. I tend to need more sleep, and I get very physically ill if I don't get enough sleep. I do have depression, but I would much rather have depression than have anxiety, because anxiety is a state of constant fear. So depression, whenever it kicks in, it's almost like welcomed, because I'm like, I get to feel nothing, and that feels better than anxiety, which is a really crappy thing to feel. But I just want to sort of show how bad anxiety feels compared to depression for me. And the worst part about anxiety is that I tend to practice avoidance with both my work and my feelings. I am constantly trying to distract myself, which makes me more anxious because then it makes me behind, and then everything is a little more difficult to cope with, especially because I'm already in this heightened state of stress. So that's anxiety for me. But I also have depression, and I can tell whenever I'm depressed because I stop taking care of myself. This might mean showering less. It might mean like skipping brushing my teeth, not doing the things that I know that I'm supposed to be doing. It gets bad. I stop taking care of my relationships. I cut people out. I cry at videos that I wouldn't normally cry at. I cry during parts of movies where I'm just feeling like heightened emotions, like not necessarily like sadness, but just like I very easily like happy cry, like I'm just on the brink of tears a lot, and that's depression for me. Sometimes I don't respond well to other people's feelings, or I don't feel things much at all. I know that I am depressed whenever I am walking and it feels like I'm walking through like sludge. Like it just physically feels difficult to move, and I would rather just sit down. So for me, that is what depression feels like, and it sucks. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about what anxiety actually is. Anxiety is the fight, flight, or freeze response. It's our bodies giving us extra energy because they feel like we're in some sort of danger. But most of the danger that we face in the modern world is not predatory, it's like emotional danger. But still, our stupid, dumb monkey minds are so dumb. It's just like, here's all this extra adrenaline, and we end up with our hearts pounding and our extremities like feeling cold and shaky, and our minds start racing with awareness because our minds are trying to make sure that we are constantly vigilant and that we are aware of all the things around us, which stresses us out more. My gut instincts when I'm feeling anxious are to distract my mind, to play a game, to listen to a podcast, to watch TV, to pace around, and to talk about anything other than my feelings. I want to be distracted. But I know that that is not what works. My EMDR therapist has had to remind me several times by sitting me down and making very stern eye contact. She's told me the only way to stop a panic attack is to be present, to be mindful, to be in your body, to concentrate on the feelings, and eventually they subside. And I know that that's true. And sometimes it's nice to have that reminder. I once lost my passport, and I only realized it the day before I was supposed to leave for a trip to the UK. I was supposed to talk at a conference, and I already have a lot of fears about public speaking, but here I am 2 days before the conference. So I drive up to Philly, I stay overnight, I wait in line starting at 5 a.m., I get a passport, I don't sleep well the night before, I don't sleep on the plane. I take a plane, I take a train, I take a taxi, and I show up to talk an hour before I'm supposed to go on stage. And I don't have a panic attack because I was listening to the lecture, The Science of Mindfulness at the time, which included a bunch of meditation practices throughout it. And I was basically meditating for the 12 hours that I was listening to it on the plane. Instead of having a panic attack, I started focusing on all of my physical feelings. I was saying to myself over and over, my heart is pounding, my hands are cold, I'm shaking, I feel scared, I feel it in my stomach, I feel it in my chest. And I was describing the way that anxiety and panic attacks felt to me in that moment. And I was focused on them. And the more I focused on them, the smaller they got, which is a really amazing feeling. Like, if being able to stop a panic attack is like a superpower. If you've ever had a panic attack, they make you feel like you're going crazy, something's wrong, you're having a heart attack and you need to go to the hospital. That is what having a panic attack is like. And it's not just like, I feel stressed out. Panic attacks are like a legitimate thing that goes wrong in your mind. So anyway, mindfulness is the thing that stops panic attacks. But sometimes for me, it doesn't always work, especially when my panic attacks come because I haven't been sleeping well. If I'm laying in bed and I'm feeling anxious and I do like 2 rounds of meditation, so like 20 minutes of meditation, if I'm not feeling better, I will get up and go do cardio. Studies have also shown that exercise helps with anxiety, which is super cool. I can do that. So I just get up, do 10 minutes with my Workit app, and then I'm able to relax. I'll get my heart rate up, and then my heart rate will naturally come down because I've given my body something to do with all of the adrenaline that it gave me. I find that that helps. If you aren't somebody that's big into meditation, sometimes exercise can help. The importance is just to focus on the body, and it's really hard to not be mindful of the body whenever you're working out. I wanted to talk about depression as well because I recently made a video on Patreon about feeling burned out, and a lot of it had to do with just being bummed out. And there's a difference, obviously, between being sad and being depressed. They're very different things. I am sad that I got baby bangs thinking that I would look like Bridget Bardot when I actually look like Dwight Schrute. That bums me out. It doesn't make me depressed. I don't have a reason for being depressed. I just am. It's just a state of mind. It's where I'm at. It doesn't come from a particular place for me, but you can also become depressed if something bad has happened. For depression, I'm gonna say it again, exercise. Studies have shown that 20 minutes of cardio a day helps with loads of things, ranging from dealing with addiction, growing new brain cells, and it also helps to treat mild to moderate depression, and it helps with anxiety too. If you want to hear more about the effects of anxiety on the brain, I definitely recommend you read the book Spark by John Rady, MD. So here's the bummer thing. If you've been depressed for a few weeks and you can't exercise, you're gonna feel bad that you feel like you should be able to do this really simple thing that you're not able to do. Exercise is helpful for mild to moderate depression. If you've been depressed for a few weeks and you're literally not able to exercise, it's time to get help outside of watching YouTube videos. I know that's my first response too, is to try to find a friend or somebody that can give advice. But if you are feeling really down, it doesn't necessarily have to be feelings of wanting to die, but sometimes the feeling of not wanting to exist is sort of a slippery slope, and that is a time where you should definitely go see a professional and consider getting help. I'm not able to take medication because I'm extra sensitive to medication. Every time I've gone on it, it's been with really bad side effects, but they might be a good fit for you. You might also want to consider therapy. Cognitive therapy is sort of talk therapy. It does not work for me, but I had a great response from EMDR, which you should definitely read about. EMDR is amazing. It's one of the best treatments for post-traumatic stress disorder, which is what I had, which is the reason that I became depressed and anxious, but I didn't know it for a long time. I just thought that some bad things happened to me in my childhood and that now I was just kind of messed up. And I'm less messed up now. So it's pretty cool. Another thing that can be really helpful when you're feeling depressed is to track your mood. There's a really great app called the CBT Thought Diary, and it helps you track your moods, and it also helps you to rephrase your worries or concerns after you remove cognitive distortions like self-blaming or catastrophizing or fortune-telling or all or nothing thinking. It makes you challenge your negative thoughts and then restate how you feel without those distortions. This is really helpful because when I am depressed, I fall into traps of not being able to remember the last time that I was happy, and it's not because I haven't been happy recently. It's because it's kind of like there's a dementor in your house and you literally can't remember the last time you were happy sometimes. So now I want to talk a little bit about prevention, because if you are in a place where you can do things to prevent it, prevention is absolutely key. So I've talked about meditation a lot, and I really want to recommend the app Headspace. Headspace is an app that has these really cute cartoons that teach you how to meditate. So if you don't know how to meditate, or if you think it's just like sitting there and trying to think about nothing, that's not what it is, and it's a really great app for teaching meditation. This morning I didn't feel like meditating, but I did a guided meditation for eating my food where I just concentrated on the way it smelled, the way it looked, the way it crunched. Being present in that moment was a form of meditation, and it was really helpful for me. I felt so much more calm after I ate my breakfast. I know that I've said it a few times, but I'm gonna go ahead and say exercise. Exercise has been one of the biggest things that sort of kept me out of depression. I don't feel like I'm sitting on the edge of depression and not whenever I've been exercising a few times a week. There's an app called Spark It. If you feel like you can't get out of your house, if you don't want to get a gym membership, it's a good one. Self-care is super important, and it doesn't just mean facials, although that could be your form of self-care. If you have been depressed, sometimes self-care just means taking a shower, brushing your hair. And I'm so sorry, planet Earth. I'm so sorry, but I buy paper plates and disposable silverware because I don't take care of the house when I'm feeling depressed. I just don't. So it's really upsetting for me to see like a sink full of dishes. I know that's bad, but it's better than me feeling bummed out on top of being depressed and not wanting to take care of things. So that's just a thing that I'm gonna do. That's my form of self-care. I'm sorry. We also have somebody that comes to clean the house. They come every week. We need it. I also have a list of activities that I like to do that I like to sort of pull from whenever I'm feeling down. I have been prescribed to do one a day, and they range from things like drinking out of my favorite teacups to going for a walk to drawing. I'm currently in the process of reorganizing the room that I'm in right now to become a designated illustration room because I want to spend more time doing that, because that'll make me feel better. Another thing that can be really helpful for prevention is getting enough sleep. Sleep is so important. In theory, prevention is not hard to do, but if you are already in a funk, having to actively work on things requires you to be active, which maybe you don't feel like being. It also requires you to have a little structure, which is really hard to implement when you're down. Prevention is also really hard to maintain if you are like me and you have a hard time maintaining practices because you're like, I'm better now. It's really hard to stick with a routine, but I know it's really important because of how many times I've relapsed, so I just stick with it. So I'm gonna list a bunch of resources for you guys, everything from some of the books that I've listed, some of the apps that I've listed, and some other stuff that might be important for you to go through. Hopefully you're doing fine. Hopefully this is just seasonal affective disorder, but if you also suffer from anxiety and depression, I hope maybe it was nice just to hear that you were not alone, because you're not. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more videos, I post one every month on my Patreon, but they're mostly about being a wedding photographer. I just really wanted to make this. It's the right time of year. I'm feeling good about it. I hope this is helpful. Thank you so much for listening. Have a good day. Bye.